friends, my name is Heather and welcome to Brilliant Blue Reviews. In today's video, I'm going to be doing another new release book review. The book I am reviewing today is We Three Queens, a Royal Spyness mystery by Rhys Bowen. This is the latest in the Royal Spyness mystery series, which I have been reading for quite a while now. I will tell you that I have not read all of them. There are a lot. This is the list of all of the Royal Spyness mysteries up here. You can see that there is a little novella at the very beginning, which I have not read. And then this is the 18th novel in the series. I read the first four first in order, and then I skipped around and I read the 12 Clues of Christmas, I think. And then, yes, and then God Rest Ye Royal Gentlemen, which was the next Christmas novel. And then I read every one since then, which was Peril in Paris, The Proof of the Pudding, and now We Three Queens. Now, I'm not sure if she intends this to be a Christmas novel. I am filming in front of my Christmas tree today, partly for just a change of scenery, but partly because it is the Christmas season, partly because I didn't want to sit on the floor today, and also because I'm not altogether sure if she intends this to be this current year's holiday book. The title, We Three Queens, is interesting because it kind of seems like a little twist on We Three Kings, like the song We Three Kings of Orient are. What she's referring to with the title, boy, I'm still actually not sure who she's referring to with the title. So I'll come back to that because there's a few different possibilities. I have really enjoyed this series, the Royal Spyness Mystery Series. You may be familiar with Rhys Bowen. She's a pretty popular author. She writes a lot of different stuff. I've read some of her other books too, some of her standalone novels. I tried one of her other series one time and just didn't get into it right away. Decided I wanted to stick with this series. I might in the future try one of her other series. If you have a favorite of her other series, let me know in the comments. She does write, as I mentioned, a number of good standalone novels as well. I have at least one on my Goodreads to read list that came out very recently as well. This book was released on November 19th of this year. So this is a very new book. I highly suspect I was the first person to get it from our public library because I'd had it on hold for a while. I knew it was coming. And I think I got it on the 19th, and I just finished it now. Today is December 4th. I finished it last night. So it did take me a while to read. It's a standard length novel, 36 chapters plus an epilogue, 319 pages. I was reading, 4, 5, 6 chapters a night, but I think it just took me a little longer because this was over Thanksgiving break. My daughter was home from college. I was pretty tired. We were kind of busy with a lot of things. And so some nights I was only able to read like one chapter. I did see some other commenters on Goodreads in the reviews when I was writing my written Goodreads review this morning say that it starts out pretty slow and that it takes quite a while before anything happens. That is true, but I never felt like it was a slog to read or that it was boring or anything. I was completely fine with the pace of the novel. I did get to quite a ways into it though and realized, the things that it says in the synopsis haven't happened yet. Well, it turns out that it's actually 3 separate mysteries in this novel. And I actually liked that. And there are some characters in the book that assume that 2 or more of the things are related, but it turns out that they're all 3 completely separate things. I feel that the fact that there are 3 completely separate mysteries and all the characters that are introduced in this book makes up for the fact that the entire thing is set at Ainsley at their estate that they live at. So the main character, Lady Georgiana, and her husband Darcy, and now their new baby James, who was born at the end of the previous book, are living there. The house is owned by her godfather, who was previously her stepfather, Sir Hubert. He was her mother's 3rd husband, I think. She adores him, and he thinks very much of her, and he still pines over her mother terribly. Her mother does come for a while, is in part of the book. She comes for a visit supposedly to see Georgiana and the baby, but it's really more that she's there because there are these Hollywood actors and a Hollywood film crew on location filming on the estate for a movie about Henry VIII and two of his wives. Sir Hubert ran into these people when he was doing something in California. He travels a lot. He's like an explorer, adventurer guy. And he was in California and he met these people and invited them to come and film some of their movie at his estate, Ainsley, in England. And they kind of increasingly encroach on Georgiana and her husband and her family because first they're just going to film outside, and then they come in for dinner a couple times. And then because it's cold, the novel is set in November and into December, just like now. They start to let them come in so they can warm themselves. And then they start filming inside, and they just kind of like increasingly take over more and more space in the house, which the servants aren't too happy about. In addition to that, I mentioned already that Georgiana's mother comes to visit for a while, and there's a whole interesting side story with her because her latest sugar daddy, if you will, because she goes through men like crazy in all the books, is Max, who is German. And she's living in Germany, and this book is set at a very specific time, as all of the Royal Spyness mysteries are. It starts out on October 23rd, 1936, okay, when Georgiana is very content living her quiet country English life with her husband and her baby, and then it gets totally disrupted. And it ends on December 11th, 1936. Which was a very significant date in history, and I will tell you that in a minute. So what else is happening, though, if you think about world history, is this is shortly after Adolf Hitler became Führer of Germany, and he is gaining strength in Germany, and her mother's fiance, I'm really curious if they actually do get married. Georgiana and Darcy are trying very hard to talk her mother out of marrying Max because they said that if you marry him, you'll become a German citizen, and then you might not be able to leave Germany if you want to or if you need to in the future, and she won't listen to them. And he was in London visiting with the ambassador, the German ambassador, and the king. The king at the time is King Edward the Eighth? It's King Edward the Eighth, and his real name is Edward of York, but they call him David in the book and all of the books. And I don't know if the royal family really called him David or if, I don't know. But the king who abdicated the throne on December 11th, 1936, that's how it ends, to Mary Wallace Simpson. And then it was Bertie, King George, who ended up taking over for his brother, and that was Queen Elizabeth's father. And then Queen Elizabeth, who we just lost a couple years ago, she became queen when her father died unexpectedly at a fairly young age. I'm a big royal family fan. This is kind of a historical fiction novel, and all of them are, because she writes these very true and specific experiences and events from the real royal family into her books. So Georgiana is a fictitious character. She's supposed to be the king's cousin. She's a great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Her father was the grandson of Queen Victoria. And then her mother is actually an actress whose father, the other grandfather, is her Cockney grandfather from East London who comes and stays with them sometimes. He's staying with them at the beginning of the book, but he leaves when he finds out all these people are coming. So all the people that are coming are Lady Georgiana's brother, half-brother, the Duke of Rannoch, who lives in a castle in Scotland. His name is, they call him Binky, and his wife, Fig. They're in pretty much all the books. And they have two kids, Adelaide and Podge. And they're coming down to stay with them for a while. Georgiana suspects that it's so that they can stay in the nice warm house at Ainsley instead of their drafty, cold Scottish castle during the winter months. But they're coming down to visit for a while and to look at boarding schools in the area for Podge. He's only 7. And Georgiana really disagrees. She and her sister-in-law Fig have a lot of disagreement about how they raise their children. And thankfully her husband Darcy, who's a very cool guy, he's Irish. However, he also does something undercover for the Foreign Service for the British government, which is all hush-hush, and that's through all the books too. They agree that they are not going to send their son James to boarding school when he's 7 years old, that he can go to a nice local day school near where they live until he's 13 years old, and then he can go to the boarding school that Darcy went to that he liked very much. So that's their plan. And she holds the baby. She brings the baby downstairs from the nursery. She has the baby with her a lot. She's breastfeeding. And Fig and her mother actually think all of this is just outrageous. They completely disagree with her and how she's parenting. I would argue that Georgiana is parenting more like parents of today, or I would have when my kids were little, more like that. The rest of the characters in the book are parenting like they did in Victorian times. Fig and Binky and their 2 kids are staying. Sir Hubert is there. He's often not there, but he is there at this time. The entire film crew is there, filming the actors filming the Henry VIII movie. Georgiana's mother comes to stay for a while, and Wallis Simpson comes to stay. She's actually the first one to come, and she's coming as a favor to the king. The king has asked Darcy and Georgiana to hide her on their estate for some time until he decides what to do. Because this was right before he made his announcement that he was going to abdicate the throne because he was just so hopelessly in love with Wallis Simpson. Okay. If you don't know the story behind this, Wallis Simpson was a twice divorced American woman, not a very likable person. Okay, this entire series actually centers around Edward's relationship with Wallis Simpson. The first book, her Royal Spyness, involves a couple of things. First of all, it involves a then single young Georgiana trying to support herself by cleaning other people's houses because she doesn't have any money. The Depression, the worldwide Great Depression, her father has died. Her mother's nowhere to be found. Her half-brother Binky gets the title and the castle. And so she doesn't really have any way to support herself. And so it starts out that she's in London on her own, staying at their London house and then cleaning other people's houses for money. And while she's there, then Queen Mary calls her to Buckingham Palace and asks her basically to start spying on her son, the future king, Edward, kind of seeing what he's up to with this woman that's caught his attention, the woman being Wallis Simpson. Rhys Bowen is writing into this fictitious account of Georgiana the real happenings of the future king and this woman he was in love with. After he abdicated the throne, they did get married and they lived in exile in France for the rest of their lives, fairly unhappily and in much isolation, as I understand, until he died eventually. They did let her come back to England and everything for the funerals. And eventually Wallis died and she was all alone and not very well off at that point. The other thing that's really significant about them is they're rather notorious for being Nazi sympathizers. And there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down with that. It was actually probably good that he did abdicate the throne to marry Wallis Simpson because, as is kind of alluded to in this book, a lot of people really feel, historians really feel, that the Nazis were kind of setting him up to be like a puppet for them in the UK. So it's a whole interesting historical thing, which is really serious and very fascinating and everything. But she writes all that into these very entertaining, lighthearted mystery novels. The over-encompassing thing is that Georgiana is spying on her cousin for his mother, the Queen of England, okay, Queen Mary. But in the midst of that, there's this whole slowly progressing over the course of numerous novels, romance with her future husband Darcy, who she's married to by this time and living with and has a family and a couple dogs. And there's always some kind of scenario, something's happening, and then there's some kind of mystery. Somebody gets kidnapped or somebody gets murdered or something, and Georgiana finds herself, increasingly with Darcy's help, in the position of having to kind of solve the mystery. So that's kind of the premise behind these books. Now, in this specific book, she's got this film crew and all their stars and stuff coming. She's got Wallace Simpson staying in the house, trying to hide from everyone, because the king is trying to decide if he's going to marry her or if he's going to just keep her as a mistress, which is what everybody thinks he should do, or what, because Parliament won't ever let her be queen. It's a complicated thing in a constitutional monarchy like the United Kingdom. It's complicated, and some of the rules have changed over time, because obviously, like now, Prince Charles, who is the King of England now since his mother, Queen Elizabeth, died, he divorced his wife, Diana, and got remarried, and they allowed that, and he's king today. His brother Andrew also got divorced, although he and Sarah still live together, which is so weird. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, his sister, she also got divorced and remarried. There's actually been a lot of parallels, and there's a whole channel where she talks at length. She's made several videos about the parallels between the king in this book and Wallace Simpson and Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, who is also a divorced American that nobody really likes and that caused him to, kind of go into exile from the royal family and from England. So there's a lot of parallels there. Okay, but that's a whole nother tangent. But in this specific book, she's got all these people at the house. But in the first part that that one reviewer said was kind of slow and it took forever for something to happen, I would argue that was entertaining enough in itself, just in there having to juggle all these people and everything that's going on. She's got all these people staying, and it's very hectic and entertaining in itself. But then the first of the three mysteries is Wallace Simpson goes missing. She just disappears. And so that's one of the mysteries. What the heck happened to Wallace Simpson? Where is she? She left all her stuff behind. Did she get kidnapped? This is terrible. The king's going to freak out. Okay. So that's mystery number one. Mystery number two is a little girl who is one of the actors in the movie that is filming. She disappears. So there's the whole question of, are these two disappearances related? It's the same day. They both disappear on the same day. They're looking all over for them. They're looking frantically, searching everywhere for both of these people, trying to figure out what happened to them. Is somebody kidnapping them? What's going on? They resolve the thing with Wallace Simpson. I won't tell you any more than that. And the little girl comes back, I guess is what I'll say. She is returned somehow. I'm not going to give away any more than that. She's fine. And on the day that she and her mother and the director of the movie are giving their press conference, which, yay, this is going to generate all this buzz for our movie, another woman from the film, one of the main actresses who was playing one of the wives of Henry VIII, is discovered by Darcy and Georgiana and their dogs in the woods behind their estate, murdered. Nobody even knew she wasn't there, and they find her body buried in a shallow grave behind the house. The dogs discover it, and she's been strangled. And so that's the whole third mystery. And that one kind of eclipses the return of the little girl who was missing. So those are the three mysteries, and they happen kind of back to back to back. And it's easy to suspect that these two disappearances are related, or the girl on the film's kidnapping plus this murder are related, but are they? And so that's what happens in the plot, and it's very interesting and a good story. And I was worried, because it was all taking place on the Ainsley estate, that it might get kind of boring and claustrophobic, because they don't go anywhere in this book. A lot of the books, they're going places and stuff, or she's going into London and stuff like this, and it's literally all at the house. I mean, they have a farm, and they'll go like up to the farm and talk to the farm hands and look at the chickens and stuff. And they go in the woods a couple times, but it's right behind their house. And like once or twice they go into the village, but that's it. And I was worried that that would be, stifling somehow, but it's not, because there's so many characters and there's so much stuff going on that it keeps you engaged through the whole thing anyway. I gave this book 4 stars. It was a very entertaining and interesting addition to the series. I have enjoyed this entire series. Some books I like better than others, but I gave We Three Queens 4 stars. Okay, let's go back to that title. The queens could be a lot of different people. They could be Queen Mary, because she makes a reappearance at the end of the book. She's not the queen consort anymore. Well, is she still considered queen consort after her husband died? I'm not sure, but she's still called Queen Mary. She'd be like the queen mother at that point, like Queen Elizabeth's mother was, whose name, coincidentally, was also Elizabeth. She could be one of the queens. The 2 women playing King Henry VIII's wives in the movie could be 2 of the queens. Georgiana is kind of like queen of the estate. Could she be one of the queens? So I'm not really sure who they're referring to as We Three Queens. But, there's several options there. But it's just a kind of a clever wordplay for the title. Again, it doesn't take place at Christmas, but it leads up to, right into December. They mention Christmas a couple times. She writes books in Georgiana's life going continually, pretty much. There's never more than a few months between the events in the books in Georgiana's life. But, I can't remember when the first one started, 1933, 32 or something like that. So overall, all 18 books only cover like 3-4 years of Georgiana's life. So I am curious if maybe this time next year there will be another book picking up right from where this one left off that will actually take place over Christmas. I'm not sure. Here's the thing I liked. In conclusion, they brought the story of the Royal Spyness mysteries totally full circle in this book. In the first book, she is summoned to Buckingham Palace to meet with Queen Mary. And, there's kind of a joke about how she can never manage to curtsy and kiss Queen Mary on the cheek at the same time. And in this one, she talks about how she managed to curtsy and kiss Queen Mary at the same time, and so she's obviously made progress. It kind of brings the story full circle. So the story being that Queen Mary kind of gave Lady Georgiana this assignment to spy on her cousin, the future king, because of this whole issue with Wallis Simpson. And in the final conversation that she has with Queen Mary, she is basically concluding, well, thank you, Georgiana, you did your best, but they both agree he's probably going to abdicate. And that was on like November 13th, Queen Mary says. And so we sit here waiting for doom to fall, she said with a sigh. He'll have the final answer from Parliament any day now, and then he'll have to make his decision public. And then Georgiana kind of excuses herself, and she asks if she wants to come and visit sometime. And she says, most kind of you, I'm intending to go to Sandringham for Christmas, which the royal family still does to this day. She mentions that she has to get home to feed the baby because she's breastfeeding. And the Queen asks, you don't have a wet nurse? And she said, of course, this modern generation, they want to be involved in their children's lives. Look at Bertie and Elizabeth. So that was Queen Elizabeth's father and mother. They do everything as a family. It's good in a way because he's going to need all the support he can get. Take care, my dear. I'm glad you have found yourself a decent man and have a happy life ahead of you. So she wishes Georgiana well. So they kind of bring it full circle and conclude this arrangement, if you will, that Georgiana was kind of the spy for Queen Mary in regards to her cousin and Wallis Simpson. And because we know that after this, Edward and Wallis Simpson live for the rest of their lives in exile in France, there's nothing else for Georgiana to do as far as being her Royal Spyness. So in that regard, I kind of feel like this was the conclusion to the series, which would be fine. It's a good conclusion. However, because she's young now, married, has a new baby, her whole life kind of is starting in this stage of her life. And because very shortly after this, Germany is going to invade Poland in September of 1939, and World War II is going to start. And they're talking so much about, the Nazis, and her mother's still in Germany. There's some loose ends that could be tied up in future novels. And they definitely could still have her encounter and solve mysteries, just on her own with her husband without it being this kind of assignment she got from Queen Mary. So it has the potential both to be the concluding novel of the series, but there is also the potential for there to be many more books in the series following Georgiana and Darcy's lives and going into the years of World War II. She hasn't written anything that far yet. I mean, she does have standalone novels that are set in World War II. But her Constable Evans, and then is it her Molly? The other two main series that she writes, I think, are both earlier than this in time, in history. So that would be something new for her. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video of this book review of a newly released novel, the latest book in the Royal Spyness mystery series, We Three Queens by Rhys Bowen. I gave it 4 stars. I would recommend it. If you haven't checked out this series and you're a fan of British history, the royal family, or cozy mysteries, this would be a series that you would really enjoy. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time.